Hello, this is Justin from the Tech Train here, and in today's tutorial what I'm going to show you is how to create this interactive colouring book in Microsoft PowerPoint. You can see that we've got a number of colours on the right hand side which I can choose from, and then once I've chosen a particular colour I can then select that and paint the image on the left hand side. So it's a nice little tutorial that will show you a number of different tools and will teach you a little bit about writing in VBA, which is the programming language we're going to use. We're not going to use a lot of it, but just a little bit, and also some logical thinking and using shapes. So let's get started. So there are three parts to this particular PowerPoint presentation. We have the picture on the left hand side, the paint palette and the brush in the bottom right corner here. And the purpose of the brush is to show you which colour is currently selected. So as I click on the different colours in the paint box at the top, you can see that the paintbrush down here changes colour to match. And then whatever colour we choose is the colour that we can then paint with in the picture on the left hand side, like that. And of course we can reset everything by simply choosing the white colour and then clicking on those parts to reset it. So let's look at how we can produce this step by step. It's a good task for students to try, perhaps as their first introduction to writing a little bit of simple code, doing a little bit of VBA, because it's about logical thinking, it's about a little bit of code, and it's also of course about using shapes and assigning macros. So there's quite a few little basic tools which students can enjoy. So what I'm going to do then is start a new presentation. I'm going to close the old presentation, get rid of that. No, we're not going to save it. So you can see step by step everything that we need to do. Now the first thing I'm going to do is change the layout. I want a blank slide here, and I'm going to change the background as well, just so we can see things a little more clearly, because of course with the black and white pictures we're going to end up with different contrast if we don't have a coloured background. So what I'm going to do is change that to radial and set the gradient like that. There we are, just so that the black and white pictures or the parts that are uncoloured will stand out against that background a bit more clearly. Okay, so now we've got the background done. The first thing we're going to do is the paintbrush. So I'm going to go to Insert Shapes, and we need three things for the paintbrush. We need the tip, we need the bit that holds the tip to the brush, the handle rather, and we need the handle. So these are the three shapes we're going to use, and we'll see how those can be adjusted now. So the first thing to do with the shape here, I'm going to fill it with white, change the shape outline to black, and change the width of the outline to 3 points. Now that doesn't look much like a brush at the moment, or the paint tip, so I'm going to right click and edit the points. I'm going to change this point at the bottom left from a corner point to a smooth point, and I'm going to do the same thing with the one on the right. I'm going to lift this one on the right up slightly so they're more even, and then the one at the top I'm going to pull up slightly, and as you see I click on it I get these little handles which I can use to pull and distort the angle of that curve. I'm then going to just lift this bit up so it's a bit more even, and there we are, that'll be the tip of the paintbrush. Now this bit here is the rounded rectangle. Again I'm going to fill it with, actually I'll fill it with a sort of grey colour, change the line to black, and again make that 3 points. And it's a bit of a square edged rectangle at the moment. I want it more oval, so when I click on it you can see there's a little orange or gold coloured circle. If I pull that you can see that I can make the ends of the rectangle more curved. There we are, that will do for that. So I'm just going to reduce the size of the brush and put that just underneath like that. Now the handle, again I'm going to colour this. We'll have an orange handle with black outline and 3 points. This will need to go underneath everything, so I'm going to send it to the back and just position that underneath like that. So there we are, a pretty simple little paintbrush that will do for this. Now I want to rotate this at about 45 degrees and put it in the bottom right corner. Of course if I was to rotate it then that would just separate everything out like that. So I'm going to right click and group it first of all, then I can rotate it as one group and bring it down into the bottom right corner like that. And now I can ungroup it. Now, it's not important particularly, but there is a little bit of the paintbrush sticking out over the edge of the slide, and I'd like to get rid of that really. I'd like to remove that bit that's sticking out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a rectangle, and I'm going to remove the edge from it so that I can put that right up against the bottom of the slide like that. And then I'm going to click on the handle of the brush, hold the Shift key down and click on this rectangle. And then in the Drawing Tools Format toolbar, or tab rather, I can click on Merge Shapes and then Subtract. And there we are, that's now removed the part of the brush that was overlapping. If you have an older version of PowerPoint, by the way, unfortunately that Subtract function is not available. Right, next step is to add in the little blob of paint up here. Now you could use any shape. I'm going to use a circle. I'd like it to be a perfect circle, so I'm going to hold down the Shift key so that I can lock that to a perfect circle. But there's no reason why you can't use any shape at all, of course, for your paint box. Next, I'm going to change the outline to black and 3 points. And the colour inside, of course, it doesn't really matter. We're going to have lots of different colours. But for the purpose of this, I'm going to have that as red. There we go. So I have my paintbrush and I have my first colour. Now the next thing we need to do is to name the paintbrush and this colour. This is important because we'll need to refer both to this brush here so we can change its colour, and we need to refer to this shape here so we can get its colour. That'll happen in our code, so for our code to be able to know which shape we're talking about, they have to have names. If we go into the Home tab and click on Select on the right hand side, and then click on Selection Pane, here we can see the names of all our shapes. If I click on the brush, the tip of the brush just here, you can see that currently it's called Isosceles Triangle 3. So I'm going to simply change that to brush, like that. And now the paint pot colour here is currently oval 9. I'm going to change that to red. Now you'll end up with quite a few of these coloured pots here, and they'll each have a name which refers to the colour that's inside them. And again, that will help our code know which of the colours to use. It doesn't matter what words you use over here. You could have light red, dark red, medium red, burnt red. It's up to you, as long as each of them has a unique name. Right, so we've named our brush, we've named our shape. We can close the selection panel for the moment, and it's now time for some code. So you might be tempted to create lots of these colours to begin with. Don't do that, because we'll need to add some code that will then be connected to this paint pot here, and once we've done that, once we've made that connection, then we'll make copies of it so that all the copies also have that connection to the code. So it's easier and saves time if we just have one of these colours to begin with. So to open up our code window, if you hold down the Alt key, which is to the left of the space bar, and then tap the F11 key at the top of your keyboard. That opens up the code window, and you can see that on the left hand side we have VBA project, that's the coding project, for presentation 1. That's the name of the presentation that I'm currently working in. So I'm going to right click on that and insert a module. This is simply a sheet where I can type out some code, and we need 3 separate bits of code. The first bit of code that we need is to create a variable. A variable is like a little box into which we can store a single piece of information. So to create a variable, we start off with the word dim, and then we name our variable. It can be anything you like. But in this case, what we're going to store inside this variable is the name of the colour that we are going to be using. So it's going to be named colour. So dim colour, and what we're going to be putting in this variable is a name, some text. So we can actually say that this type of variable is going to be a string variable. String is another word for text. So dim colour as string is our first block of code. That was quite simple. So now we're on to our second bit of code. Now this second bit of code is actually several lines, well not many, it's just a few lines. But we'll need to put them into what we call a subroutine. So a subroutine is a block of code that's named that we can then get the computer to do as one lump of code, one block of code. It does all those lines in one thing. So what are we going to do this? What are we going to call it? Well, we are going to pick up or get the color that the user has clicked on. So I'm going to call mine get color. Now, of course, when we do click on a color, we'll need to make sure that the computer makes a note of which color or which shape the user has clicked on. So when we ask the computer to do this block of code, we're going to say my shape, that's just like a variable name that I've just made up myself, that's not a code word, my shape as shape. So this is what we call a parameter. It's like a variable, but it's used by a subroutine. And this here, my shape, is a sort of a variable or parameter that stores information. What information does it store? It stores all the information about the shape that has triggered this subroutine. So sub get color, my shape as shape, means okay, whenever we ask you to do the block of code called get color, then make sure you make a note of all the details to do with the shape that we've clicked on. And of course, that'll be linked to this block of code here, this shape rather here. So later on, when we click this shape, the computer will make a note of all the details about this shape, its name, its color, its style, where it is. So it'll get all that information and it'll store all that information in a little block of code, if you like, a little block of information that we've called my shape. Okay, so sub get color my shape as shape, press enter, it'll put in the end sub for you automatically, don't get rid of that, we'll need that. That simply means this is where our subroutine begins and this is where that subroutine ends. So what are we going to do in here? We're going to do three things. First of all, our variable color that we created up here, we're going to put in there the name of the block, the name of the shape that we have clicked on. So if we click on the red palette, then it's going to put the word red, which is the name of that block of shape, into the variable color. So if I have my shape here that's named red, over here we can see that's named red, then what we're going to do is put the word red that I've put here into the variable color. So color equals, and we've got all the information of the shape in my shape, dot, and what particular bit of information is it about my shape? Well, it's the name of my shape. So if we click on the red palette, then the name red will go into the variable color. So now we know which shape the user's clicked on and we know what the name of that shape is. Now what we can do is go and pick up that particular color. Want to pick up whatever color we have actually made that particular shape. So although I've called it red, that computer doesn't know what color that shape actually is. I could have this named red and actually fill it green, and we'll still be able to paint in green. The computer doesn't recognize that as a color, it's just some text. So what I'm going to do now on this line is write active presentation, because we might have more than one PowerPoint file open at a time, so we need to make sure that the computer is only looking at this presentation if this one's active. Then we need to tell it which slide we're looking at. I'm on slide 1. If you've only got one slide, then it'll be slide 1, but you might have a title slide, so just make sure you put the correct number there for the slide you're on. So here, obviously I'm on slide 1. Dot shapes, because we're looking at the shapes, and which shape are we looking at? Well, it's whatever shape the name stored in color refers to. So we're just going to put in color in there. And what do we need to do? We need to pick up that color, pick up the style of that shape. So if I've clicked on the red circle, the name of that shape will be stored in the variable color, so in this case the word red, and then this line says look at slide 1, find the shape called red and copy or pick up the style of that shape. Once we've copied or picked up the style of the shape, where do we want to put it? We want to put it on the brush. So we'll type active presentation.slides1.shapes, and this time we don't need to use a variable because we know the name of the brush. It's always going to be brush. So we type that in speech marks like that. And now what do we want to do with that? We want to apply the style or the color that we have picked up there. So there we go, that's it. That's all the code we need for the getting of the color. So if we go back now to our presentation and we click on the color palette here and we go to insert and then click on action, and in the section here called run macro, you can see a list of all the blocks of code, the subroutines that we have created. We've only created one, it's called get color, and there it is. So we choose that and click OK. Now if I run this presentation, you'll see that if I put my mouse over the red circle, I get the little white hand, which tells me that there is an action linked to that shape. And if I click it, you'll see that the paintbrush down here turns red to match that color. So what we'll do now is we'll take a few copies of this color palette here. So I'm going to click on it once. I'm going to hold down the Alt key, but not the one on the left of the space bar. I'm actually going to hold down the Alt key on the right of the space bar. On some computer keyboards that may be Alt GR for Alt Grey, but if you hold that one down, you'll see that the mouse has a little plus sign next to it, and if I keep that held down, I can click and drag and just take lots and lots of copies of that in one go. So it's a nice quick way of doing a bit of a copy. What I'm going to do is just, I'm not going to worry too much about lining them all up. You can do that, obviously. I'm just doing this a bit quickly. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to color each of these. So I'll have an orange there. That's more yellow. Let's choose an orange there. Then I'll have a yellow color. Then I'll have a light green. We'll have a blue, and I'll have a purple, like that. Whoops. Purple fill. There we are. So there we are. Those are my different shapes. In fact, this green one here, I'm going to change that to white so that we can remove the color later on from our coloring. Now, in order for these to actually work properly, we need to change their names now. So we open up the selection pane and you'll see that they're all called red. So we have to click on each one at a time now. This here you can see is the orange one. It's called red, so I'll need to rename that. I'm going to call that one orange. This one here, just to show that it doesn't really matter what you type in here, that the name that I'm typing in isn't somehow magically going to tell the computer the color. I'm going to call this banana, which we know isn't going to be a color, but you'll just see how that will still work even if we type in a name which tells us what one it is, but it's not an obvious code color. This one I'm going to write in as white, and then we're going to have this one here. I'll type light blue. There we go, and this one will be purple. That's all we need to do, because of course we attached the code to this red palette here, and then when we copied it, we copied the action to every single one of these. So if I was to click on the light blue one and go to insert action, you'll see it's already got run macro get color. That's already there. And if I was to run this presentation, you'll see that now I can click on any of these colors and the brush will change color to match it. There we go. So that's all working fine. Let's just save our presentation now before we move on to doing the color, because it's really important we save this in the right way. Because what we need to do is to make sure when we are saving it that we don't save it as a PowerPoint presentation. What we need to do is make sure that we save it as a PowerPoint macro enabled presentation. The reason is that we have code built in to our presentation, and if we don't have it saved as a macro enabled presentation, then the code will be removed from the PowerPoint file, and of course it won't work. So I'm going to call this color and click save. There we go. So that's now saved properly. That's all working. It's time now to create our drawing. So now we have our colour palette and our brush, it's time to create the shape or the picture that we're going to colour. Now this could be abstract, it could be as simple as you like or as complicated as you like. I'm going to do a simple butterfly and show you how I created the one that I demonstrated earlier on. So I'm going to begin with a single circle. Now that's going to be the left hand wing of the butterfly. All the shapes that we're going to create will be filled with white, have a black outline, and that will be set to 3 points. Notice that I'm using the same thickness of line for these images as I am for the color palette over here. Now that's important because when we apply the style of one of these paints to the shape over on the left hand side, we'll be applying not only the fill color but also the line color and style around the outside. So it's important to keep that consistent. So here's my left hand wing. Obviously it's not really a butterfly wing shape yet, so I'm going to right click and edit points. Although there are black dots around the edge of this, which we can pull out and adjust, you can click anywhere on this edge here. So I'm going to grab just around in the middle of this point and pull that up. Then I'm going to do the same thing down at the bottom here and pull that round to create a sort of a kidney bean look. We can click on those and adjust the curve a little bit, pull that in slightly perhaps, and do the same for the one at the bottom like that, and pull this in a little bit like that as well, and then flatten off the right hand side. I'm just going to pull that down like that perhaps. So it's up to you. You can play around with this as much as you like. I'm not going to do too much of that because I don't want to take too much time. But there we are, that'll do for the left hand wing. I'm going to duplicate that by pressing Ctrl D, and then I'm going to do a flip horizontal and put that on the right hand side over here. The next thing I'm going to do is the body of the butterfly. That's another one of these rounded rectangle shapes. So I'm going to put it like that. It's obviously quite square at the moment, so we're going to click the orange dot and pull that to round the edges. Now I can actually do manually what the code over here is doing when I'm picking up and applying styles or colour. I can click on this butterfly wing here, which has a white fill and a black outline, go to the Home tab and click on Format Painter, which picks up the style. I can then click on this shape and apply the style. It's basically what our code is doing. In fact, it is exactly what our code is doing. So that's just a way of quickly applying the style for each of the shapes that we'll be using. That'll do for the body of the butterfly. Next, I'm going to do just a few shapes inside. So I'm going to grab a circle, draw it over here. I'm going to edit points and just distort that slightly, just so it's not blocky shapes. There we are, that will do. I'm going to pull that up like that, put this into the corner, there we are, and then again apply the style of the wing to that. Then I can duplicate it again, format, rotate, flip, and then bring it over here, and you'll see when I drag it there's a sort of a dotted red line which shows me that it's lined up with the one on the right hand side, so I know that that is the same height. Let's do two more shapes very quickly. So let's use a triangle shape this time, like we did with the brush down here, and again edit the points. I'm going to smooth out those 2 points there like that, and change the angle over here, widen that slightly, and this I think will probably go down here, but I'll need to just pull out that point at the bottom slightly to fill in that. There we go, that's a little sharp, but again I'm not going to worry too much at this point because I don't want to take up too much time. There we go, that will do. Bring that down perhaps, and in there. That's a little bit rough, but again it'll do for the moment. For the purpose of this, let's format that, and then again format it, flip it, move it across, line it up. So the basic, that is an appalling butterfly. I do apologize. You'll see that in the demo I did earlier on it was a lot neater, but then I did spend a bit longer on that. That is probably the world's worst butterfly. Still, that aside, it will work. So what we need to do now is to create the code which will allow these shapes here to pick up or apply the custom colors on the right hand side. So it's time to go back into our code window, which we can do by holding Alt and pressing F11. So the first two parts of our code are there already, the dim color as string, that's our variable, and the subroutine that picks up the color from the paint pot on the right hand side. So the last block of code we need is another subroutine, so we'll start it with the word sub, and this time it's to apply the color to whatever shape we've selected. And if you use the name apply color, or even just apply, that will help. The fact that it begins with the letter A will make life a little bit easier later on. You'll see why. Again, when we do click on a shape, we will need to know which one it is. So we need this my shape as shape in the brackets just afterwards. So it's a little bit like having a variable, but it's called a parameter, and it contains a lot more information than just one thing. Okay, now the problem we've got here is, of course, that it's possible someone might click on one of these shapes before they've selected a color on the right hand side, which means that our variable color won't actually contain anything. It won't contain the name of a color yet. So we have to just think about what do we do if color is blank. So we'll do a little if statement. So if color equals, and then just empty speech marks, so not a space in there, just absolutely nothing, then what we'll do on the next line is simply exit this subroutine. So we won't continue doing any of the code in this block. We'll just end our end if statement, and now if we get to this line, we know that the variable color does contain some text. It does contain the name of one of those color circles. So if it does contain the name of a color circle, then what we need to do is to pick up that color first of all, and then apply it to whatever the shape is that we've clicked on. So the color that we know we are going to be using is the name stored in this variable color. So we'll start off with active presentation dot slides, and of course we're still working in slide 1 dot shapes. Now which shape is it? It's the shape name that's stored in color. That's where the name of the color circle is, and we need to pick up that color. So that line there you'll see is exactly the same as this line here, where we picked up the color and then we applied it to the brush. Here we're picking up the color just as we did before, and now we need to apply it to the shape. Which shape is it? Well, it's my shape. It's whatever shape we've just clicked on. So we can type my shape here, and then simply dot apply. We don't need all the information about active presentation dot slides 1 dot shapes, because we've clicked on the shape. It knows that it's that shape on that slide on that PowerPoint presentation. So all that information is already included in that parameter there. And that's it. That's all we need. So that will now allow us to apply a color. What we have to do, of course, is to now link that code to each shape in this picture on the left hand side. I have to say, the more I look at that butterfly, the more embarrassed I am by it. I'm seriously considering just scrapping this video and doing that all over again. So please, if you've got this far in the video, don't judge my butterfly drawing skills. Please do comment below what you think of my butterfly though. Right, so let's click on one of these shapes, any one of them. I'm going to start top left here, click on that shape, insert, and then go to actions. And you'll see that in actions we can go to run macro, and this is where using the word apply is useful because it's the one at the top of the list. So we don't have to keep clicking on that list and scrolling down to choose the subroutine. It's the one that's at the top. So we apply the color, and all I'm going to do is click on each shape in this picture, click on run macro, and OK, because apply color is already selected. So click, action, run macro, click, action, run macro. So the more detailed this picture, then of course the more you'll have to do this, and you could possibly do it all on the right hand side, just draw the right hand side and then copy and paste and flip it all across. But there we are, that's now done. It doesn't take too long. So there's the butterfly. I'm just going to save this presentation again and now press F5, and you'll see now if I click on a shape, click on a color, I'm going to choose I'm going to choose purple. I can click on these shapes here and color them purple. Let's have some red at the top there, some yellow at the bottom, and the body will set to black. And there we are. And of course, to reset it all, we simply click on white and just click on all of these shapes. So there you have it, an interactive colouring book which you can do in PowerPoint with a little bit of VBA code, a little bit of drawing, hopefully considerably better than mine, and the linking of code to buttons. So I hope that was useful. I hope you enjoyed that. If you did, please do give this video a like. That would be awesome. And of course, do leave a comment if you have any questions, any suggestions, or you just want to laugh at my drawing skills. That's absolutely fine. If you do leave a comment, I will read them. I will reply to them as soon as I possibly can. So do feel free to leave them behind. And if you haven't subscribed already, please do hit that subscribe button, or click it, or tap it, or whatever. Just don't leave it behind. And if you could like the video, that would be brilliant. Thank you very much indeed for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll look forward to seeing you in the next video. Bye for now.